Hello, everyone. Today, I'd like to discuss paper two with you all. Now, paper two, as you all would be aware, is known as research methods. Now, this particular paper that I have in front of me to help you explain the paper pattern, the paper structure, and the sort of questions that we get in paper two would be from February, March 2024. Now, if we talk about this paper two, again, this paper is of 1 hour and 30 minutes. You get 1 hour and 30 minutes to do this paper. And at the same time, this paper is of 60 marks, just like paper one. So yeah, without any further ado, let's begin. The first question that we had in February, March 2024 paper said, explain what is meant by negative correlation. Explain what is meant by negative correlation. Now, the first thing first, remember this question is asking you to explain. And this is worth 2 marks. Keep these in mind, right? So what are they asking you to explain? They're asking you to explain what negative correlation is. Now, in a question like this, because it's a 2 mark question, what the examiner expects from us is to, number one, explain. I mean, you get the first mark for explanation here. This is what we're talking about. And you get the second mark for providing detail. Now, what sort of detail are we talking about over here? For instance, if you just write relationship or a link between two variables, right? This would be explanation. So the question again over here was explain what is meant by negative correlation. Explain what is meant by negative correlation, right? And if you end up writing the relationship or link between two variables, this would just be seen as an explanation. That too, I'd like to say not a completely correct explanation. However, to be able to score a 2 on this, you're expected to write as one variable or a thing goes up, the other goes down. Now, over here, you have an explanation along with detail. So if you have a closer look at this, let me remove this highlight from here. If you have a closer look at this, this is this part, right? This is the part I'm talking about. So this is when you're providing detail to it, right? Now, moving on to the second part of the first question over here. The second part of the second question, the second part of the first question over here reads, explain one ethical advantage of a correlational study compared to an experiment using any psychological example. So this happens to be a 3-mark question. This question again is demanding explanation, right? So if it is a 3-mark question, we need to keep in mind, we need to figure out, and all of this is possible through practice. It wouldn't take long. Attempting a few questions or going through a couple of marking schemes from the previous papers, trust me, you'd help, you'd understand this better. And of course, there's nothing better than practicing. So yeah, explain. They're asking you to explain what? One ethical advantage. Now, do not miss on this word ethical over here. Explain one ethical advantage of a correlational study compared to an experiment using any psychological example. So taking a look at what the examiner expects from us, number one, you're getting the first mark over here for writing down the advantage. You're getting the second mark over here for further developing that advantage or providing detail to it. You're getting the third mark over here by providing an example, right? So the first mark from here, the second one from here, and the third mark from here. Now, let's have a look at a couple of examples that the examiners have used. Number one, this, okay, let me show you the question again. I'm not sure because the font over here is too tiny. So yeah, the question again was explain one ethical advantage of a correlational study compared to an experiment using any psychological example. So you could write, correlations can investigate variables that could be unsafe to change. Now, what all is required over here? Number one, your understanding, your grip, and your ability to apply correlational studies is very important, right? Your grip on correlations is super, super important. What are correlations, or why do we use correlations? Correlations are the link or the relationship between any two variables. Why do we typically use correlational studies? We typically use correlational studies when it is not ethically possible, not ethically permissible, or practically possible for you to manipulate variables, right? Now, I'll repeat that again. we usually use, or we typically use, correlational studies. We typically, not always, right? Usually, mostly, typically, we typically use correlational studies when it is not ethically permissible for us to be manipulating variables, or when it is not practically possible for us to be manipulating variables, right? Now, I'm repeating this over and over again so that you guys could think of an example. Now, what does this say? Uh, Correlations can investigate variables that would be unsafe to change. Now, I remember from a mock paper that students had to attempt, where they were asked to design a study. It had something to do with junk food. And I saw so many kids, they ended up using an experiment. They ended up using an experiment where one of the group was made to consume junk food alone. Again, that's something that you practically wouldn't do. That's wrong. That's unsafe, right? So, correlations can investigate variables that would be unsafe to change. This is an advantage. You want to provide detail to it. I'll highlight this one in yellow because variables do not have to be manipulated. Correlations are relatively better in those situations. Let me just remove the highlight from the other part so that there's no confusion. Okay, yeah. Now, taking it ahead, example, the amount of sleep someone has. Now, see, this is how you're getting the first mark highlighted in green. This is how you're getting the second mark highlighted in yellow. And this is how you're getting the third mark by writing an example that is highlighted in pink over here, right? Getting back to the question over here was explain one ethical advantage of a correlational study compared to an experiment, right? Now, you need to remind yourselves to go through these command words, right? Like I keep on saying, you should know what the examiner means when the examiner uses the word explain, compared to when the examiner uses the word identify, compared to when the examiner would use the word outline, compared to when the examiner would use the word discuss, compared to when the examiner would use the word evaluate, identify, so on and so forth, right? So explain one ethical advantage. Now, if I speak about the typical mistakes that I usually see students making, the examiner very clearly, or the paper setter has been very clear when he or she has said they need one advantage, one ethical advantage, right? So if they're asking for one advantage, please do not try writing more than one, right? They've written one, and if I remove the mess from here, you'd see this one is written in bold. So if they're asking you to explain one ethical advantage, you might as well stick to one, right? Take your time, because if this is a 3 mark question, you have got about 5 minutes to be able to attempt this, right? Once you have already sketched the answer in your mind, then it shouldn't take more than a minute for you to write it, right? So use your time wisely. And yeah, about time. Paper two, towards the end, the 10th question, I'm sure many of you would be aware, is the question where you expected to plan a study or design a study, which has been the infamous question since almost always. Not that that question is difficult, but I've always seen kids finding it very challenging. So yeah, you need to have ample of time to be able to attempt that question too. So yeah, keep a track on time. Yeah. So the first mistake, the first common mistake. The second one, remember the examiner has been specific when they're asking you to write down one ethical advantage, right? If I may show this to you, where the examiner has given instructions, the principal examiner has given instructions that if a student mentions any practical advantage instead of an ethical advantage, you do not give the student any marks. NAQ, what does NAQ stand for? Not answered the question. As simple as that, right? So even when what the example that you use would be an example, but because it would not be an ethical example and instead it was a practical example, you do not get a mark, right? So be very clear. Read your questions thoroughly. Read your questions thoroughly. If need be, read it more than once, read it twice, read it thrice, right? Because if you're not understanding the question, you would not attempt the question well, your answer would be incorrect. And the last thing we'd want is the examiner to put a comment on answer that says this, right? Not attempted the question, and mark us with a 0. So another example that we have over here that might as well help you. So the second example over here says example. Oh, so the second part, correlations can study variables that would be distressing to manipulate. See, distressing. This word distressing over here shows us we have understood the question well, and we're answering the question in terms of ethics, right? And it's an ethical advantage to use correlations as compared to an experiment. So was the case with this one when the student used the word unsafe, right? So taking this ahead, moving on, let me just remove all of this. Yeah, can study variables that would be distressing to manipulate. Example, how many friends a person has. So you cannot be asking someone to have many friends and on the other hand be asking someone to not have friends. That again would not be a very safe thing to do. That would be distressing for someone, for the participants of the research. So my dear, over here we had question one over here totaled 5 marks. We had a 2-mark question at the beginning, and then we had a 3-mark question, right? So 5 marks in total. Taking this quickly ahead. Before that. So when we talk about paper two, as we talk about paper two, in paper two, we again have 10 questions, just like we had in paper one. Typically, if we talk about the pattern that we see is you get questions like these: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have question number 6. Question number, I just pick up another color. So question ends up being the same. Orange, yeah. 7, 8, 9. And then towards the end, we have question number 10. Okay. Question number 10. Okay. So the first 4 questions, the first 5 questions that you'd see them either being based on research methods, either they're based on research methods or research methods along with knowledge on core studies, right? You could independently get questions on research methods too, just like the first question that I just showed you, right? Now, question number 6, this question number 6 usually is of 6 marks. And this is a nice question. If practiced well, you would get 6 on 6 on this. And then you have question number 7, 8, and 9. And these are usually from novel situations or new situations where the examiner would put you through a situation, and based on your grip on research methodology, you'd have to give answers. Novel situations, made up situations, pretend situations, as many kids call it. And this 10th question is the planning a study or designing a study question. So this is how usually paper 2 goes about. So taking this a step further, moving on. If we talk about question number 2, question number 2 I just saw is of 2 marks. Question number 2 over here reads, the memory score in the study by Andrade, that is doodling. We're talking about the memory score, the memory score. And this is from the research that was conducted by Andrade on doodling. The memory score in the study by Andrade was calculated using 2 sources of data. So the memory score was from the study by Andrade was calculated using 2 scores of data. 2 sources of data, sorry. One source was the number of correct responses of names and places. This was the first source that we're talking about over here, given by the participants. So let's read this again together. The memory score in the study by Andrade doodling was calculated using 2 sources of data. One source was the number of correct responses of names and places given by the participants. Now, what is the question over here? The question over here reads, describe how the total memory score was calculated. So in a question like this, again, your knowledge on the research or the core study by Andrade is essential, which I'm sure you all by now did prepare well for your paper 1. So having a look at the instructions that have been given to allocate marks or to allot marks or to reward marks for this particular question. So the second source of data, you identify that, you get 1 mark, right? So the keyword over here is describe. The keyword or the describe, the what do you call it? The command word. The command word over here is describe, right? So this is the command word. And when you are asked to describe, you describe. You just don't just identify and let it be. So if you write the second source of data, you get the first mark, right? And the second source of data over here would be false alarms, errors. And the second mark, how the memory score was calculated. The memory score was calculated, they were taken away from the correct responses scores to give the memory score. And now, so if you remember the research, what happened over here was the correct responses of names, they were taken away from the errors that were made were subtracted from the correct scores to be able to calculate the overall memory score. So again, your grip on core studies is again essential. Okay, at this point, there are many students who would end up saying, uh, sir, do you want us to rote learn all of the studies, all of the studies? Do you expect us to rote learn all of the core studies all over again? I wouldn't say that, because paper two, as the name also suggests, is about research methods. It revolves around research methods. And yes, if you feel like you should give your core studies a read, that should be okay. But your emphasis over here at this point should be on research methods. Yes, I'm advising you to read through the entire chapter from your course book if you're using the course book, or regardless of the source that you're using for preparation, read through the entire chapter. And do not just read the chapter, do not just go through research methods to learn definitions. More than learning in paper two, what matters is how well you know it to be able to apply it, right? So you should be able to apply it as well. So yeah, question number two, I hope you've all understood this. Moving on quickly towards question number three. Having a look at question number three over here, the third question is from the study that was conducted by Dement and Kleitman. So in the study by Dement and Kleitman, I'll highlight it. I'm not really happy with the font over here, but it is what it is. So in the study by Dement and Kleitman, Sleep and Dreams, participants were given instructions before the study about what they should and should not do, which I'm sure you all remember the controls. We're talking the controls over here, right? So in the study by Dement and Kleitman on sleeps and dreams, participants were given instructions before the study about what they should and should not do. Outline one of these instructions. Easy peasy. So you just outline an instruction. It could be something as no alcohol, no coffee, no caffeine, eat normally, arrive before normal bedtime. Okay. Now, in a question like this, we are again asked to outline one of these instructions. Even when the examiner is asking us to, and even if you have a closer look at this, the examiner is asking us for any one instruction. So yeah, you might as well listen to what the examiner wants from you. The second question over here reads, explain. The command word again over here is explain. Explain why the instruction you described in part A was important to the validity of the study. Now, I keep on saying this when I did keep on saying this while explaining paper one as well. Questions of this sort, questions of this nature, when you see the first question and the second question, they're both connected. In other words, or it wouldn't be wrong if I say the answer that you're writing for the second part would actually be dependent on the first part. So you might as well, maybe through the corner of your eye, do have a look at the second part too. You wouldn't want to outline any instruction that you might not further be able to elaborate on and comment on the validity of the research. So explain why the instructions you described in part A was important to the validity of the study. So again, this being a 2-mark question, the first mark you receive over here is on the explanation, the second for detail, and this okay. So if you've written a if you provided a detail that does not have to be linked, you get a single mark. But of course, to be able to score a 2 on 2, you need to be sure about what you're writing, and you need to give the examiner the answer that fulfills the requirement of the question. So no alcohol or no coffee, right? That was a control. The drugs affect sleeping patterns or dream. So the participant's dream or sleep would not be representative. Again, this is how you score a 2 on 2. I would just put this into a box so that you could read this. This is what I'm talking about. Let me just clean the other. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, the control over here is if you write down about the participants being asked not to consume alcohol or coffee. Why though? Because I'm sure you all are aware coffee affects your sleeping patterns, right? So yeah, coffee charges you, coffee keeps you motivated, so does mine. It would affect your sleep, right? So if a participant's sleep is affected, the sleeping patterns or the findings of the research then might not be representative of the typical sleeping patterns of participants. So yeah, to be able to score a 2 on 2, you need to provide a detail. So taking this ahead, moving on to the next example that the examiners have provided us. Let me highlight this one now. To reduce participant variables, participants were okay, yeah. So participants were asked to arrive just before the bedtime, because if they came earlier or later, they might not be able to uh, sleep well or sleep the way they do. So this, I think I need to readjust this into a box. So this is what we're talking about. This, here you go, this part, right? I hope this is clear. Now taking this to the next page, we just spoke about question number 1, question number 2, and question number 3. Now, yeah, we just spoke about question number 1, question number 2, and question number 3. Let's move on to question number 4. Question number 4 over here reads, the study by Perry et al. Personal space measured preferred interpersonal distance, that is stop distance in a computerized virtual room. I'll just try to zoom as much as I can to be able to help you understand or at least read this. So yeah, the study by Perry et al. Personal space measured preferred interpersonal distance, that is stop distance in a computerized virtual room. Preferred interpersonal distance was measured in relation to a ball, a friend, a stranger, and authority figure. You all would be aware of this if you've learned the study by Perry et al. Now, then we have this table over here. Let's have a look at what the table has to say. Table number 4.1 shows preferred interpersonal distance in control of placebo condition for the high empathy group. So having a look at the information that has been given to us, we have mean stop distance, then we have the ball, friend, stranger, authority figure, and numerical data. Perfect. Now having a look at question 4A part 1, which is a 4-mark question. Yeah. Draw a bar chart. We have been given instructions, draw a bar chart. Now for uh these graphs, there are 3 different graphs that are part of a syllabus. You need to know what a bar chart is, you need to know what a histogram is, you need to know what a scatter graph is, right? If you do not know them as yet, as soon as you done this, as soon as we done with this, kindly open your book and read through them. Questions on graphs, they're typically easy, but I wonder why many students, they end up getting confused. Instead of drawing a bar chart, they'd end up drawing a histogram. Scatter graph is again different, but many students, they do get confused between bar charts and histogram. Avoid that. So you are being asked to draw a bar chart of the table in of the data in table 4.1. This is the data we're talking about, right? You need to draw a bar chart keeping this table in mind. This table, okay? This table, right? Now, Uh, in table 4.1 on the axis provided, perfect. You must label the axis. So this is a 4-mark question, right? There's a 4-mark question. And if we have a look at the instructions that we have over here, number 1, you label x-axis, you get a mark. I'll show you, it would be written here. Yeah, here you go. So this says 1 mark, you get 1 mark for each correct feature, max 3 marks if bars are not separate. If bars are not separate, then it's not a bar chart. So the examiner is still being nice to you, which at times happen, at times it does not happen. So in this case, for this particular paper, you could still get a max of 3 marks if the bars are not separate. Now, you get the first mark, you could possibly get the first mark by labeling the x-axis, being approachable or protagonist, stooge, object, or OWTTE. What does OWTTE over here mean, or words to that effect? Anything that means the same, right? So you simply write this, you get a mark. I'm highlighting this one in pink, right? You label the x-axis, you get 1 mark. You get the second mark for labeling the y-axis over here. So it could be here. This one, I'd highlighted it in green. So mean stop distance, this one, you're getting the second mark. You're getting the first mark here, you're getting the second mark here. X-axis units, at least 11 to 39. Why 11 to 39? Because the smallest number over here is 11 and the biggest number over here is 39, right? Now, x-axis units 11 to 39, all bar heights correct. Of course, this wouldn't be very difficult to draw. You are labeling the units over here as well. Ball, friend, stranger, authority figure. The smallest distance over here was for the friend. You have a look. This one being 11 here, a little above 10. The second over here is a ball that is 29, ball 20. So that's, is it 29? Sorry, ball is 21. So this is 21. The third over here is authority figure 34, authority figure being 34, a little short on 35. And the fourth is the stranger 39. For the stranger, this is 39, little short on 40. So how do you simply get marks? You draw a bar chart, right? These 4 distinctively different bars over here for the ball, for the friend, for the stranger, for the authority figure. And if you still don't know what bar charts are, don't you see bars over here? It's as simple as it could be. You get the first mark, you get the second mark, you get the third mark, you get the fourth mark. So yeah, I hope we would not miss on any marks if we get a question on a bar graph now. So moving on to the second part of 4A, this says, explain why a bar chart is the explain why the bar chart is the appropriate graph to use to plot this data. So yeah, again, because you have categorical data, discrete data, you may refer to it as nominal data. Again, OWTTE, and yeah, it is not continuous. You could write this too. What does ORA mean? ORA over here means or reverse argument. And yes, very simple. You score 4 marks from here. You score a mark from this one. The next question over here reads, state one conclusion from the data. The conclusion could be drawn by merely having a look at this, right? The shortest distance is for the friend and the greatest distance is for the stranger. You just put it into words and there you go, you get a mark. You get 2 marks, 1 marks, I'm sorry, 1 mark here, this one. Right, so you get 1 mark for conclusion. Must be a conclusion, not a repetition of the results. Remember, there's a difference between results and conclusion. There's a difference between results and conclusion. Results are more specific. Conclusion is typically your description of or your explanation of those results. So it could be, example, smaller distance for a friend than a stranger. Example could be balls approached less than friends but more than strangers. Smaller distance for a friend than a stranger. You are just asked to write down one conclusion, write down any amongst these 3 and you get your mark. The next question, suggest one ethical strength of using a computerized virtual room to measure preferred interpersonal distance. Suggest one ethical strength. Remember, the command word over here is asking you to suggest, and your answer could be any suggestion, right? They're asking you to suggest one ethical strength, right? Don't miss on that word there, of using a computerized virtual room to measure preferred interpersonal distance. How does using a computer help you make your research more ethical? Now, because if you're using a computer, there's less risk of invading privacy. That's a strength. But because this is a 2-mark question, you need to write more. Likewise, if you write less risk of invading protection from or psychological harm, participants might be upset by by real people being close, by real people being close. So yeah, the CI makes mistakes at times too. So do we get this part? Hopefully we do. We move on to the next question. Now about this fourth question in total was a 4 marks, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, your knowledge on Perry. along with your knowledge, I mean, your knowledge on Perry would, of course, complement, but your grip on research methodology over here mattered. Initially, you had to draw a chart worth 4 marks, then you had to then you had to explain why you chose a bar chart. You chose a bar chart because you were asked to use a bar chart. You asked to explain why the examiner chose a bar chart, or how is it that the bar chart, or how is it that using a bar chart or a chart was the best fit for that particular situation. The next question, they asked you to conclude from the data, and then an ethical strength. Moving on, the fifth question over here, define the term population. What does the word population mean? Define the term population, right? They're asking you to define the term population, and not they're not asking you to exemplify. I mean, if you want to give an example, yeah, sure, you could. I don't think it's advisable though, because it's just a 1 mark question. But if they're asking you, the examiner is asking you to define, you might as well define. Now, so you get 1 mark for definition. Individuals who share, this is the definition. Individuals who share a characteristic or have something in common, you refer to to them as a part of a population. NB means nota bene, or in other words, mark well, or in other words, please note, or in other words, this is important. People from the same area, place, country, location, or ethnic group, right? If you simply write this is an example and not a definition. You were asked to give a definition, and the definition over here that would be correct is individuals who share a characteristic or have something in common. These tiny things, you should not ignore them when or while preparing for paper 2. Like I had said, fine, I feel by this time many students, they think they know their research methods well, uh, but there are many students who walk up to me saying, hey sir, we think we know research methods, or we do know research methods. It's just the designing the study question that bothers us. Even if you feel that confident, my advice over here is go through the entire chapter, read the entire chapter, make sure you, regardless of the source that you're using to prepare, could be any book, could be any handout, any notes, anything. Make sure you're reading it, or rather, I'd also want to very strongly advise you all to go through your syllabus, right? All you have to do is go to Google, type down A-level psychology syllabus 2026, the syllabus code 9990, you'd come across the syllabus. Go to the research methods part, and whatever you see over there, make sure you're covering it, right? Now, there are many books that are published. A few of them are endorsed by the Cambridge as well. It's good following these books, but either you're following the Cambridge course book by Julia Russells, or alternatively, if you're following any other book, you do have a look at the syllabus from the marking scheme, and you should feel confident about knowing research methods only when you know that you know it all from the, I mean, you could use it as a checklist. You could use the syllabus as a checklist. So yeah, taking this ahead, the second question from question number 5, the second part of question number 5, outline one example of a population from a core study from the social approach. There you go. Your knowledge on, or your grip on core studies. You are asked to give an example of a population from a core study from the social approach. Now, the 3 researches that are part of social approach, we had Milgram, we had the study by Perry et al., and we had the study by Pliavin, right? So you need to know this. And yeah, you need to know the studies you need to know what studies are a part of your syllabus from the biological approach, what studies are a part of your syllabus from the cognitive approach, what studies are a part of your syllabus from the, what's the third one? Learning approach, what studies are a part of your syllabus from the social approach. So outline one example of a population from a core study from the social approach. This is a 1 mark question. If you write Pilyamin subway passengers because they were the people who were on the train, yes, this was a characteristic that they were sharing, right? Or the people on routes at that particular time, this is another characteristic that they were sharing. Again, if you would alternatively want to use the example of Milgram, you could write, for Milgram, the readers of a newspaper, the readers of a particular newspaper from the area, New Haven, or the local newspaper. If you want to use the examples from the study by Perry et al., you could say undergraduates or people from the Haifa University, and the people from Haifa University were from Israel. So here you go. and a 1 mark question, but then another mistake many students make at this point is they see it's a 1 mark question, we're like, hush, let's do it real quick. Fine, you trying to save yourself time, fine, you feel overconfident, but again, I'm telling you, many students end up missing this part, right? So you end up missing this part. You, the examiner would simply comment NAQ, which means not answering the question. If you're not answering the question, you're not getting the mark. Moving on to part 5B over here. This one over here reads, define the term sample. Define the term sample. So what is a sample again? Individuals who participate in a study, right? So the population, we use the word population to refer to individuals who share a particular characteristic. We use the word sample to refer to the individuals who participate in a study. Moving on, part 5B, what does this read? Outline one example of a sample from a course study from social approach of outline one example of a sample. One example of a sample from a course study from the social approach. Again, here you go. Your knowledge on the course study. See, this is questions like these are amazing examples. Remember at the beginning when I had said your knowledge on course studies is important along with your grip on research methodology. So yeah, you want to use the example of Pilyavin. Pilyavin's passengers in the carriage with the observers, there were 4,000, around estimated 4,500 people, 4,450. For Milgram, there were 40 men. These 40 people were from different occupations, volunteers responding to an advertisement. You want to use the example of Perry, there were 54 or 40 men, right? Now, taking this a step further, moving on to question number 6. Now, if you remember a couple of minutes back when I had said the typical pattern that paper 2 follows is you have 10 questions. The first 5 questions that we have are based on either your grip are either testing your application skills or your knowledge or your ability to apply research methodology. They could ask the stuff independently based on research methods, or they could ask stuff along with or that is in line with the core studies that are part of a syllabus too. The first 5 one, right? The sixth question, which is again usually of 6 marks, question number 6 of 6 marks here. Having a look at this question, the question over here reads, describe practice effects and fatigue effects using any examples. Now, using any examples, there are many students who get confused over here. When the examiner says any examples, it could be any examples. It could be it could be an example from the course study, or otherwise you could make up an example over here too. So describe practice effects and fatigue effects using any examples. Again, a 6-mark question. I'd like to suggest treat it as 2 different questions of 3 marks each, where you describe what practice effects are and you make sure that you're giving an example, and then you define what then you describe what fatigue effects are, and then you give an example either from a core study or you could make it up yourself too. Now, 1 mark for each definition, point of detail, up to maximum of 2 marks for each term or concept, 1 mark for each example, max 2 for each term or concept. Examples can include examples from any study. Oh, this is what I was talking about. It could be a core study, any other study, or the candidate's own study. You could make it up to maximum 4 marks if no example or if only about 1 term or concept, and only 1 example needed to access what do you call it, access 6 marks. Moving on, order effects. Order effects are consequences of doing, I'm sorry, I had to use a highlighter. Order effects. Order effects are consequences of doing tests or tasks more than once. Example in a repeated measures design. If you remember what a repeated measures design is, a repeated measures design, when you use the same group of individuals, when you're using the same group of individuals over and over again, or when you're repeating, remember the word repeated measures design, when you're making the same participants go through different levels of IV, or when you're making the same participants go through different experimental conditions, the term we use over here is a repeated measures design. The experimental design being used over here is referred to as a repeated measures design. So in a repeated measures design, the participants could experience an order effect. What is an order effect? The consequences of doing tests more than once, right? If you're doing a test more than once, that would affect your behavior, or that would affect the results. Or you could say even in a longitudinal study, or this can be overcome with counterbalancing. Now, counterbalancing, when you when let's just say, if I may give you the example of Andrade, right? The participants over here, the participants in the research that was conducted by Andrade on doodling, some of the participants, they had the memory task test first, and then the recall task or test later. However, the other half, they had the recall test first and the memory test later. Why do we typically use counterbalancing? We typically use counterbalancing to balance out. See, look at the word counterbalancing, right? You balancing out if there has been any effect. If there's an effect, you balancing it for both the groups. Taking it ahead, practice effect. Practice effect, as the name suggests, where the participants might improve because they're repeating. Remember, us as teachers, we keep on saying practice, practice doing your papers, or try attempting papers. The idea over here is that the more you do it, the better you keep on getting at it, right? So practice effect, where participants performance might improve because of repetition. Example, remembering the answer to a test, right? If I give you a test, and then I give you the same test after 2 days, so there's a possibility that might be able to perform you might be able to perform better in the second test, right? Now, the third thing, example, getting more skilled on a physical task. Of course, if it's a physical task, you if you're doing it more than once, you keep on getting better at it, right? Practice effect. So on in contrast to practice effect, we have the fatigue effect, where the participants get worse with repetition. Look at the difference over here. Over here, for practice effect, you getting better. That is, your performance is improving. For fatigue effect, you are getting worse at it, or in other words, your performance deteriorates, or in other words, your performance gets bad. Taking this ahead, example, you might get bored, or an example, when you're tired from answering questions, right? So you make sure that you are not what do you call it, losing any marks on questions like these. There are multiple questions that we could get as a 6 marker. If Yeah, there are multiple questions that I've made you practice as well as a 6 marker. So yeah, this could be just added to that list. So the first 5 questions, we spoke about what they would be. The sixth question of 6 marks, they typically ask you to describe any two things along with giving examples. Now these ones, question number 7, question number 8, and question number 9. Question number 7, question number 8, question number 9, these are usually questions that test your grip on research methodology. Again, I'm saying this over and over again, because paper 2 is based on research methods. They're based on novel situations, or there's a made up situation that the examiner would put in front of you to see how well have you understood your research methods. Are you confident enough to be able to apply it in a novel or a new situation? Having a look at question number 7 over here. Question number 7 over here reads, Kavi has noticed that when customers leave a takeaway restaurant, they often drop rubbish. He plans to conduct a field experiment to investigate this. Kavi will place rubbish in the street or remove any rubbish so that he can record data in 2 conditions. Now, especially, I mean, this goes for every question, but especially for question number 7, 8, and 9, I'd advise you to read the question thoroughly, read it over and over again. Rather, pause this video here and read this question once thoroughly. Now, the 2 conditions over here are, number 1, when the street has 10 pieces of rubbish. The first condition. The second level of IB over here is when the street has no rubbish, right? So Kavi has noticed that when customers leave a takeaway restaurant, they often drop rubbish. He plans to conduct a field experiment, right? To investigate this. Kavi will place rubbish in the street or remove any rubbish so that he can record data in 2 conditions. So one, you placing rubbish, right? Where did it go? So one, you placing rubbish, in the street. Number two, you are removing rubbish from the street, right? For the placing rubbish in the street, how have you operationalized it? How has Kavi operationalized it? When the street has 10 pieces of rubbish, or when you're removing rubbish, you are ensuring that there is no rubbish on the street. Now, Kavi will observe 10 customers in each condition. He will count how many customers in each condition drop rubbish. Kavi will observe. So we're talking about an observation being taking place over here. 10 customers, another piece of information that we should know in each condition, 20 in total. That means he will count, if you're counting, that is quantitative data. How many customers in each condition drop rubbish? Moving on to the question 7a. Draw a table. Yeah, draw a table that Kavi could use to collect his data. So a table has to be drawn over here, and this is worth 3 marks. Number of people dropping rubbish. How do you get 3 marks over here? 3 marks would collect data with full detail or a tally or count along with the number of participants. So you get 2 marks. This when you're simply identifying two levels of IV but not the DV. 1 mark when the table outline has DV but not both levels of the IV. So your table should have details on the participants and both levels of the IV as well for you to be able to score a 3 on 3. Now and the examples are over here. Now taking this ahead, moving on to the next question. The next question over here reads, Kavi chose a narrow street. Okay, so Kavi chooses a narrow street rather than a wide street. That makes sense too. For his experiment, suggest one reason why this choice was important for the validity of Kavi's experiment. It is a 2 mark question, right? You are asked to suggest worth 2 marks in a question worth 2 marks, right? Suggest one reason why this choice was important. Why this choice was important for the validity of Kavi's experiment, right? Why the choice was important for the validity of Kavi's experiment. Now, for a question like this, the reasons for affecting validity, you get 1 mark along with the detail. So must be linked to the study to be able to score 2 marks. So you should write about Kavi. So the IV was definitely affecting the DV to ensure they saw the rubbish, to be sure that he would see dropping of rubbish, or the DV measure would be invalid, easier to observe. Now these are a couple of examples that you have over here. Let's read the question again. See, the question is asking you, suggest one reason why this choice was important. Now choose a narrow street. If you have chosen a narrow street, you could ensure that the participants get to see those that particular rubbish, and that particular rubbish over here was operationalized like this, 10 pieces of rubbish, right? So if it's a wide, it's very simple. If it's a wide street, there's a possibility that you might not notice, right? And however, if it's a narrow street, it would get easier for you. So the DV was definitely affecting the IV to ensure they saw the rubbish. Now, to be able to score 2 marks over here, you need to write both of this. And of course, you're expected to link it to Kavi's research. Now, moving on to the next question. The next question over here reads, explain why it was necessary for all the rubbish to be removed in the second condition. Now, why is it getting back to this one? Again, right, this initial piece of information is very important. That is why I had asked you to pause and read it thoroughly, right? Explain why it was necessary for all the rubbish to be removed in the second condition. If you wouldn't have removed all the rubbish, then how do you think Kavi would have been able to? If Kavi wouldn't have removed all the rubbish from in the second condition, then how do you think Kavi would have been able to distinguish between the two conditions? Simple. Otherwise, there might be little left from the previous customers, which would invalidate his manipulation of the IV. Perfectly written. Or you could write, to make it a control condition to be sure only the IV of rubbish present affected the DV. Alternatively, you could write the second one too. So again, you need to understand, you need to read it once, read it twice, because it's not about that particular first question that you come across. If I talk about question number 7 over here, question number 7, as you see, is in total of 3 plus 2 makes it 5, 5 plus 2 makes it 7. So question number 7 again is of 7 marks. To be able to ensure that you're not risking those 7 marks, right? Because the tiniest thing that you go wrong with over here from this initial piece of information, there's a possibility you might end up messing up, right? So be nice to yourself, be nice to yourself, be good, and do not rush through, right? For a question worth 7 marks, you have good about 10 minutes, right? Again, the simple formula: for a 60-mark paper, you have 90 minutes. For a single mark, you have around 1.5 minutes. In that case, 7 into 1.5 makes it somewhere close to 10, I believe, a little more than 10. Now, the taking this ahead and moving to the eighth question that you have, or that we have over here. Question number 8 over here reads: Karis is observing a class of children. I'll just clean this page so that, yeah. Okay. Now, Karis is observing a class of children who are learning to count. So, Karis is conducting a research or an observation on a class of children who are learning how to count. Okay. She is introduced to the class by the teacher, but then sits separately from the children to record her data. So then she sits separately. Okay. That piece of information from there. She is introduced to the class by the teacher, and then she sits separately. And the research is being conducted through observation, and the research is on a class of children who are learning how to count, right? So Keris is observing a class of children who are learning to count. She's introduced to the class by the teacher, but then sits separately from the children to record her data. Let's move on and have a look at the question. Explain whether Keris is conducting a participant observation or a non-participant observation. This reminds me of this part. She sits separately. If she is sitting separately, it is a non-participant observation. You need to know your research methodology for the 9,999th time. You need to know what an observation is. You need to know the different types of observation. You need to be able to differentiate between covert observation, overt observation. You need to be able to differentiate between participant and non-participant observation. You need to be able to differentiate between structured and unstructured observation. You need to be able to differentiate between a naturalistic and a controlled observation, right? Know your methodology well, know your research methods well. So explain why Keris is conducting a participant observation. Oh, I'm sorry, no. Explain whether Keris is conducting a participant observation or non-participant observation. So this is a non-participant observation. It is a 1-mark question, yet the examiner is expecting you to explain. So you might as well do what you've been asked to do. A non-participant observation, because she is separate or not involved with the class, right? Because she, or in other words, because she's not participating in the activities of the group that is being researched on. And let me be very clear, this might answer a question that you have in your mind. So if you're just writing non-participant, you are not getting a mark. No marks for just stating. You asked to explain. If you asked to explain, you add the second part as well that says a non-participant observation because she is separate or she's not involved with the class, to be able to score that 1 mark. The second question over here, which is a 2-mark question that reads: for the answer you have given in part A1, explain one strength of this type of observation. Now that you know that this is a non-participant observation, you need to explain one strength, and this is of 2 marks. The command word over here is explain. This is worth 2 marks, right? So for about a non-participant observation, one strength of using a non-participant observation. For a non-participant observation, there's less risk of social desirability, or there are lesser demand characteristics, because her presence will have less influence on the children than if she joined in, right? Of course, I think that's pretty understandable. She was introduced by the teacher, and then she ended up sitting separately and observing, as compared to if the situation would have been otherwise. If she would have been a part of the group and participated in the activities, there would have been her presence would have affected the behavior, affected the task that the kids were up to. Moving on to the next question, that is 8b. 8b over here reads: Keris uses a structured observation. All right, good to know. Suggest 2 behavioral categories that you could use to measure how well the children are learning to count. Suggest 2 behavioral categories. Suggest 2 behavioral categories that Keris could use to measure how well the children are learning to count. And this is a structured observation. Fine. You must be an observable behavior, not example of an emotion. For instance, you're actually being asked to operationalize it. The example could be counting to 5 correctly, making a mistake could be counted, missing out on a number could be counted, pointing at a number but seeing a different number could be counted, or counting on fingers could be counted as well. So we're talking about structural observation. This is how you could you could operationalize this structured observation, right? Or you could come up with something of something else that occurs to you as well, because the question is asking you to suggest. Moving on to question 8b, question number 8b, which again is a 2-mark question. This says, in relation to using one of the behavioral categories you have suggested in part B, explain one practical problem that carriers could have. A practical problem. Now, a practical problem that you could have is making a mistake. Keres won't know whether the child couldn't count or was distracted, so didn't try to count. There's always a possibility. You're dealing with children, right? So you could make a mistake in terms of recording your behavior. There's a possibility that you feel that a child couldn't count, whereas the child was simply distracted. Or alternatively, you could use another example. If we talk about missing out a number, the child may be shy or uncertain to speak. The child might be shy or uncertain, so speak too quietly. There's always a possibility that the child was uh, could the child was shy, or the child wasn't loud enough so that you could record the behavior. Carers may think they have missed out a number. Carers will underestimate their ability again. Now, this, my dear, is a practical problem. Remember earlier we had two questions that had to do with ethical, I think it was ethical strength, or problem, I think it was strength. Now over here we're talking about a practical problem, right? Now, this was question number 8. Moving on to question number 9. Question number 9. Remember 7, 8, 9 questions on novel situations. If I talk about Kavi, we did not have any research that on Kavi in our syllabus. Keres, this wasn't a research on that was a part of a syllabus too, nor is the case with Neela. So question number 9 over here reads, Neela is using a questionnaire to investigate adults' use and understanding of the internet. Interesting. Neela is using a questionnaire to investigate adults' use and understanding of the internet. 4 of her questions are, so we're talking about a questionnaire, an example of a self-report measure. 4 of her questions are: number 1, describe how useful the internet is to you. Number 2, explain whether you would like to use the internet more than you do. Uh, so describe how useful. Okay, yeah. So describe how useful the internet is to you. Number 2, explain whether you would like to use the internet more than you do. Number 3, how confident are you that you could send an email? And over here we see rating, where 1 means not confident at all, and 5 means very confident. And number D, the fourth option we have over here is using the internet can be dangerous. Do you agree? Oh, that's a question. Using the internet can be dangerous. Do you agree? And the 3 different options that we have over here is yes, no, or not sure. Identify 1 close-ended questions from A to D. Close-ended questions. So yeah, for this, again, you need to know the difference between close-ended and open-ended questions. I see C and D over here. This is a close-ended question. Remember, 1 means not confident, 5 means confident. That means you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A close-ended, you cannot just end up writing 6, because 6 doesn't exist over here. So is the case with D, using the internet can be dangerous. Do you agree? Yes, no, or not sure. There are 3 options, or you have closed options over here. So 1 mark for C or D, both work. Accept any responses that have copied out the question instead of giving a letter. So you could either give a letter C, you could either give a letter D, or you could copy this entire sentence C, or copy this entire sentence D as well. Identify 1 open question from A to D. Open question. So question number A is an open question where you've been asked to describe. Question number B, I'm sorry, option number A is an open question. Option number B is an open question as well. You could choose A or you could choose B. Here you go. A or B, and the same thing, accept responses that have copied out the question instead of giving a letter. The third one, Neela wants to add this question to explore how adults use social media. So Neela wants to add up another question to her list. How do you use social media? Tick all that apply. All right. Need to connect with colleagues. Number two, to connect with family. Number three, to discover local events. All right. Explain one strength of Neela's questions about the use of social media. Now we are asked to tick all that apply. You've been asked to explain one strength. So of course, if you've been asked to tick, this would end up helping you gather quantitative data. So her closed questions give quantitative data, so can be used to compare between participants. That's as easy as it could be. Alternatively, so it can be analyzed or total or graphed, so the data is objective, or so her closed question is less likely to produce lies as they only have to choose. Anything that works for you over here. Now, we, like I said, 10 questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, either based directly on research methods or research methods plus your knowledge on the core studies that are part of your syllabus. Question number 6 uh, is usually a 6-mark question, and where you've been asked to describe any two things along with giving examples. These examples could be from the core studies that are part of your syllabus, or could be any made-up example too. Question number 7, 8, 9. The 7, 8, 9. The 7, 8, 9. These three questions, they come. The examiner puts up questions that makes you that puts you into a novel situation, and then again, based on your grip on research methods, you'd be able to answer questions. The 10th question over here, the planning a study question, also referred to as the designing a study question, this infamous question that students find very challenging. About this question that we have in front of us, remember, this comes in two parts. The first part is of 10 marks, where you asked to send to where you asked to think a proposal. You're asked to think of a proposal for a particular study, or you're asked to design a study, or you're asked to plan a study. This is of 10 marks, but along with this, the B part, where it go? So the B part is of 4 marks. Question number 10 typically is of 14 marks, where the 10-mark question is, let's refer to it as designing a study, followed by 2 more questions of 2 marks each. All right. Now, I have a detailed video on uh, how you could design a research. I just put the link of that video in the description. Hopefully, I would not forget. And I'd advise you go through that. I'd advise you go through that. That would enhance your understanding and give you answers to many questions that you probably have in your mind too. So again, you need to read through this really well. And because this is a question of 14 marks in total, like I had shown you, for this question, you should at least have around 14, and half of 14 makes 7. 14 plus 7 makes it 21. You should have around 21, 22 minutes on you at least. So for a paper that is of an hour and 30 minutes, make sure you're done and dusted with everything in 1 hour and 5 minutes, which is pretty possible. You might as well try attempting the specimen paper too if you feel like. I mean, rather you should, just to be able to make sure that you're not short on time, or if you've appeared for any mock paper in your for your respect from your respective college, you'd have an idea. So Henry feels, yeah, the first thing, make sure you have enough of time. Number two, make sure you're reading the question thoroughly. Make sure you're reading the question at least 2 to 3 times, right? Number three, there are 6 research methods that are part of your syllabus, right? You have experiments, you have self-report measures, you have observations, you have case studies, you have correlations, and you have longitudinal researches that have recently been added to your AS psychology syllabus. Make sure you know all 6 of these research methods and you know them well. You are able to distinguish between them. And For self-report measures, you should be able to, for self-report measures include questionnaires and interviews both, so you make sure you know them both. So seven of these, right? Six research methods, but then again, self-report measures include questionnaires and interviews. Let's count them as seven. For all seven of them, you should have at least 3 to 4 characteristics written for each, right? For instance, I'll just give you an example of an experiment over here. In fact, this question number 10 is about experiments too. So for an experiment, you should, the first characteristic, like remember what I'm saying is there are 7 research methods that you have to keep in mind. Grab a paper, sketch a table there, write down experiments, and then note down 4 characteristics for an experiment. Move on, write down questionnaires, write down 4 characteristics of a questionnaire, write down interview and mention or outline 4 different characteristics of each, right? I'll tell you what to do next with them. So, yeah, for experiments, an experiment has to have an IV and a DV, one. Number two, if it's an experiment, you need to know the experimental design, right? Number three, if it's an experiment, what type of an experiment is it? Number four, the amount of control, so on and so forth, right? Write down at least 3 to 4 characteristics for each, right? Now, these 3 to 4 characteristics that you have written down, learn them, right? Even if you think you need to open your book to be able to write down these characteristics, do so, please. Learn them. And then when you are attempting a question, when you're attempting this 10-mark question, make sure that you are using those characteristics to write your answer. For instance, this research over this question that we have over here, I haven't read the question as yet, but this is about a laboratory experiment. Because you've been asked to conduct a research through or give a proposal for research regarding laboratory experiment, make sure the essentials or the characteristics of a laboratory experiment are used in this particular answer. Whatever the answer is that you're writing, make sure those 3 to 4 characteristics are a part of your answer, right? That's going to help you score real well. Now, to begin with, Henry, Henry feels relaxed when he smells flowers. He thinks that pleasant smells could influence daydreaming. Let me read that again. Henry feels relaxed when he smells flowers. He thinks that pleasant smells could influence daydreaming. Describe how Henry could conduct a laboratory experiment to investigate the effect of pleasant smells on daydreaming. Do not describe sampling technique or ethical issues guidelines in your answer. Now, this has been a recent addition from 2024 onwards, where the examiners are being very clear that they would not want you to provide a lot of detail on any particular thing over here. We have been advised by the examiner that you do not need to describe or give a lot of detail on the sampling technique or ethical issues or guidelines. Now, just pause this here, read through this question at least thrice. Read through this question at least thrice. I hope you're all done reading through the question thoroughly. Now, what you've seen over here all along written in red are instructions given by the principal examiner to paper checkers. Principal examiner is the person who sets the paper, okay? The head person, the person who leads the paper checking, the paper making and the paper checking. So this says to mark 10A, create 4 imaginary columns down 1 margin using 1 column for each of the 4 required features. Now, when I was talking about the essentials, when I was talking about the characteristics, this is what I was referring to, required features. Tick each feature, tick A, tick B, tick C, tick D when it appears, then underline the letter for detail. Again, remember when I said this is what actually gives you marks, right? So the 4 required features for this laboratory experiment would be the independent variable, the dependent variable controls the standardization or experimental design. These are a couple of examples you have over here. You might as well read through this. Yeah, and for questions like these, there are ample of questions that are present from the past papers. You might as well simply read through them and brainstorm an answer for questions of this sort. we get around from the specimen paper, if I'm not mistaken, had around 40 lines. So keep that in mind. Try not exceeding on lines. Like I said, go through the detailed video that we already have on this that would help you understand attempting these questions better. And whatever the research design that you come up with, make sure it's replicable, and replicability is possible through standardization of procedure. That, in other words, means your procedure should be detailed enough or standardized enough that if someone else wants to reconduct that research, he or she should be able to. Again, something that many students miss on is data analysis. Many students, they're super fond of collecting data because, over here they're simply asking you to conduct a research through a laboratory experiment, and it is on your discretion how you'd want to collect data. Yeah, you how you'd like to collect data. Use the method that you'd want to collect data, the method that you'd want to use to collect data. Make sure your research does not miss on the part where you've collected data, but after you've collected data, you need to turn it into results. I'm not asking you to include results. You're not supposed to include results in your answer. I'll be very clear. I'd like to repeat that. You're not supposed to include results in your answer because this question is merely asking you to propose something. If I talk about this question in particular, it says describe how Henry could conduct a laboratory experiment. So it's probably a proposal for Henry, that Henry, hey, Mr. Henry, this is all that you can do, or this is one of the way you could conduct your research, right? You're suggesting something to Henry. How do you think using results over here makes, or including results in your answer makes any sense? It does not, right? Now, if you talk about, like I suggested you to go back and go have a look at the previous researchers or the questions from previous past papers, that could be helpful. You'd see these features being mentioned over here: who, what, doesn't look like what, who, what, where, when, how. How being the most important part. This is the procedure, how you plan on conducting your research. Who, the sample. I'm like I said, this was a method that we've been advising kids to use for about good 15 years, right? But then if you have a look at the recent specimen paper that the Cambridge published before your syllabus changed, you wouldn't really see a lot of emphasis on these features. Nonetheless, using these features isn't wrong. This helps you keep a track. The who part, like I said, sampling technique, the examiner is asking you not to get into a lot of detail. What are you actually up to? I mean, what is this research about? Where, because the where feature over here would hold a lot of significance because it's a laboratory experiment, controls would be high. Your the place where you're conducting your research would be an artificial research. When something as simple as you collecting your data on a weekend, you collecting your data uh, in the evening, in the morning, noontime, and how is the most important factor that has to be taken into account over here. So these, I'll just zoom this so that you guys could have a read. Independent variables could be your smell. Flowers could be pleasant, unpleasant. You need to make sure you operationalize them. Operationalizing plays a very important role. Dependent variable could be in terms of daydreaming, which you could measure through the time, the depth, the detail. You could use a test, a self-report, observe, or a recall, just like Andrade did. Controls could be used, any two aspects identified, example, nature, intensity of smell, silence, boredom. Because it's a laboratory experiment, remember, you'd have a control situation. Experimental design, if any, clear that different participants in each condition. If you're doing that, if you're doing this, then it would be an independent measures design, otherwise a repeated measures design. These are the this is the generic marking criteria for this. Everyone aims for level 5, that is 9 to 10 marks. Describe all the required features, number 1. So you might as well take a paper, list all of these down. So when you're writing an answer to practice, you know that you're not missing on anything. All, number 2, all explicit with detail. So you're not missing on any features. They're all explicit and with a lot of detail, with mostly appropriate terminology. Clearly applies knowledge of methodology involved in planning and investigation. Now, there are others that you'd want to read as well. Moving on to the 10B part, this reads, describe one practical slash methodological strength of the procedure you have described in your answer to part A. Now, based on what your answer for 10A was, they're asking you to describe any one practical or methodological strength that you think, any particular part of the research that you felt like this was the core thing, this was the core element, or this was the practical strength or a methodological strength from your procedure, right? It should be from your procedure. Do not refer to sampling or ethics in your answer. Again, it's a 2-mark question. You get the first mark for identification, the second for detail. Strengths, methodological strength could be operationalization, situational or participant variable factors being controlled, control standardization, design or counterbalancing. You want to use reliability. Reliability could be used. You could inter-rater consistency. You could have more than two raters there, more than two observers. Intra-rater consistency. Inter-rater is two people. Inter-rater is two people rating. Intra-rater is you rating it again, except the practical or methodological strengths as well. Part B, explain why the feature of the procedure you have identified in part A is a strength. Again, many students get confused between this and this. Give them a read again. They're different questions, right? Give this a read again. And this would help you understand it better. Explanations may include, now, before that, both marks are for explaining the implications of the strength for the study. Award 1 mark for an explanation, 1 mark for detail, max 1 mark if there's no link to the planned study. All of this has to do with the study that you have planned. Explanation may include possible effects on number 1, participants' responses, behavior if the procedure had been different, right? So don't you think, I mean, whatever your procedure was, it would affect the validity, right? So if you wouldn't have used that, the participants' behavior responses might be different. Or the collection of results if the procedure had been different, or the interpretation of results. So there are 3 things I'd like to highlight them separately so that you know. Over here, the participant's response. The second thing is the collection of results would have differed. Number 3, the interpretation of results. Or you could come up with any other example too. Now, this was an explanation to paper 2 from from the paper that we had in February, March 2024. Uh, Again, read through your research methodology. You are expected to not only know your research methods, but to be able to apply them as well. And go through different examples from novel situations, and from the core studies, whatever the elements are that have to do with research methodology, you might as well want to go through them again. For designing a study question, yes, there are I understand the syllabus changed, but many of the questions from the past papers could actually be put to use. And yeah, I hope this has helped. uh, yeah, thank you.